Yeah, we got a quorum, so let's get started. I'd like to call the October 31st meeting of the Environmental Resources Committee to order. We will begin with item number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to public comments. I don't believe we have anybody signed up to speak under general public comments. We'll move on to item number 4, approve the October 3rd, 2023 committee minutes. They were in your packets. Motion by Supervisor Ritter, second by Supervisor Drabeck to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Well, moving on to item 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings, review possible actions and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration, county zoning changes, and we have quite a few of them today. We'll start by asking that everyone please mute your phones and electronic devices. The Marathon County ERC is now meeting in public hearing the location plan specifications and purpose of the following projects. 5A1, Tim Verlin on behalf of Maynard Matthey, General Ag to Urban Residential to Rural Residential, Town of Falls. 2, Matthew Heft, Rural Estate to General Ag, Town of Gunther. 3, Tim Verlin on behalf of Mitch Gums, Farmland Prez to Low Density Residential, Town of Hall. 4, Jason Flieger on behalf of Bradley Krieger, Rural Estate to General Ag, Town of Plover. 5, Michael and Janice Clemon on behalf of Chris and Crystal Clemon, General Ag to Rural Residential, Town of Reed. 6, Marathon County Parks, Rec, and Forestry Department on behalf of Mickey Family Trust, CV/RC Conservancy, and Recreation to General Agriculture and General Agriculture to Conservancy and Recreation, Town of Plover. Members of the committee present, myself, Supervisor Longenhan, Supervisor Drabeck, Supervisor Orbeck, Supervisor Unger, Supervisor Shavinsky, Supervisor Ritter. We also have Marilyn Ben, our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association representative. We also have staff present as well. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. The committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a reasonable petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. Committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant, anyone wishing to testify, will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, then third as interested may appear. And given that we have a number of rezones today, I'm going to call for each one of these once, maybe twice. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements on the overall length of the hearing to promote orally discussion. Anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or question so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are recommendation of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. And we will begin by hearing the application of 5A1. I'm going to start with Garrett. Swear him in. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed, please.
All right, this is from Maynard Matthey, petition to rezone land, staff report October 31st, 2023 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owners are Maynard Matthey, 228514 Purple Martin Lane, Marathon, Wisconsin, 54448. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Highland Drive between the intersections of Schoolhouse Lane and Highland Drive and State Highway 107 and Highland Drive. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Maynard Matthey to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to UR Urban Residential and UR Urban Residential to RR Rural Residential, described as lots 1 and 2 of CSM 3387-12-257 and located in part of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 36, Township 29 North, Range 5 East, Town of Rib Falls. The area proposed to be rezoned to RR Rural Residential, described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel PIN as shown. The Town of Rib Falls Town Board met on September 12, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, October 31st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On September 12, 2023, the Town of Rib Falls Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Board of Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Okay, questions for Garrett? All right, seeing and hearing none, thanks, Garrett. I just have a quick question for staff, not related to testimony for the hearing, but did we have anybody sign in with the sign-in sheet indicating that they wanted to speak for any of these?
We do have, not with the sign-in sheet, no.
Okay.
We do have one online for the Clemon rezone. Mike Clemon is here for that one if you have questions. I believe it's number 5.
That's 5A5?
Correct.
Okay, and there's nobody else on there that's indicated? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna call once for 5A1 through 4, but then I'll give an extra call on 5 to see if anybody wishes to testify there, just because we have so many, so. And given that we don't have a very packed house today, I think that's more than fair. So let's move on to anybody wishing to speak in favor of their proposed rezone 5A1. Please identify yourself at this time, calling once. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to the proposed rezone 5A1, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. And then third, as interested, calling once. Seeing and hearing that no one else wishes to testify on the application, I am now declaring the public hearing for Tim Vreeland on behalf of Maynard Matthey, General Ag to Urban Residential to Rural Residential, Town of Rib Falls, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Nobody wants to go trick-or-treating later, or? I make a motion to approve the order. Supervisor Ritter?
I will make a motion to approve the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Maynard Matthey to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code, rezone lands from general agriculture and urban residential to rural residential as described in the town of Rib Falls by the approving due to staff recommendation and town recommendation.
All right, motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Shafinsky. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. 5A2, back to Garrett.
All right, this is from Matthew Haft, petition to rezone land, staff report October 31st, 2023, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Matthew Haft, residing at 7402 Ryan Amy Road, Weston, Wisconsin 54476. Property owners are Matthew and Aaron Haft, residing at the same address. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on Camp Road, just west of the intersection of Camp Road and Jones Valley Road. The petition of Matthew Haft to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from RE Rural Estate to GA General Agriculture, located in part of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 17, Township 26 North, Range 8 East, and part of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 8, Township 26 North, Range 8 East, Town of Gunther. Area to be rezoned to GA General Agriculture is described as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map, located in Volume 33, page 129, number 8561, and recorded as document number 1047357, parcel PIN number as shown. The Town of Gunther Town Board met September 11, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, October 31st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wasadale Herald. Notice of the zoning change request is also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On September 11, 2023, the Town of Gunther Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Okay. Any questions for Garrett? All right, thanks, Garrett. All right, 5A2. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A2, please identify yourself this time, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A2, please identify yourself this time, calling once. And third, as interested, please identify yourselves, calling once. Okay. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for item 5A2, Matthew Heft, Rural Estates General Agriculture, Town of Gunther, I am now declaring that the hearing is now closed. Committee will now enter into deliberation. Supervisor Treybeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Matthew Heft from rural estate to general agriculture based on the finding of fact by staff and conclusions of law.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Overbeck. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. 5A3, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Mitch Gums, Farmland Pres to Low Density Residential, Town of Hall.
All right, this is for Mitchell Gums, petition to rezone land, staff report October 31st, 2023, Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. The property owner is Mitchell Gums at 224951 Dill Creek Lane, Colby, Wisconsin, 54421. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on Dill Creek Lane, just south of the intersection of Dill Creek Lane and Huckleberry Road. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Mitch Gums to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Code, to rezone lands from FP Farmland Preservation to LDR, Low Density Residential, located in part of the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 14, Township 28 North, Range 2 East, Town of Hull. The area to be rezoned to LDR, Low Density Residential, is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel pins as shown. Town of Hull Town Board met on September 17th, 2023. The Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, October 31st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wasadale Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On September 17th, 2023, the Town of Hull Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions? Okay, I have two for this one. So the first thing is, how does something that is not being farmed end up in farmland preservation? Because this application makes a note that the area currently isn't being farmed. And the second thing is, I can't remember what page I read it on, but it talks about the town's designation of the land being in farmland pres. And then I think there's another classification that it was designated as, if I remember correctly. I'll have to try and look it up on my phone here. But just to start, how can something that's not being farmed be in farmland pres?
So sometimes it's because the lot size itself. So you have to have an eligibility map in a town for farmland preservation. Every town has it. So if it's labeled as eligible for farmland preservation, one, if a lot meets the standard size, a lot of times it gets layered over as farmland preservation. Sometimes, and we're not 100% sure why, some of these smaller lots get blanketed over as part of that as well. It could be that they were separated out at one point and nobody caught it in the past, or it was prior to our current zoning code where it deals with the different regulations for district sizes and things like that. But that's a couple of reasons why it could have just been blanketed over like that.
Because my concern comes from taking productive farmland out, but if it wasn't being utilized, that's why I'm confused. Like, I think it makes sense for the zoning map to reflect its use, so I'm so far in favor of this. I'm just very confused how that got into farmland pres.
Right. So basically what's happening with this one is the property owner's family had passed away and he's the executor, and what he's planning to do is he's trying to clean up some of these different lines and things like that in order to separate the farmland from houses around it. And right now, this is one of those non-conforming lots where, for example, the shed that's listed on there is too close to the property line, and the well is extremely close to the property line. So he's trying to help clean that up and make it a conforming lot prior to selling the rest of it.
So I think I was looking at 52 with the town comp plan. It says the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as single-family residential and croplands. The town's comp plan, that's what it was. Because in the 2005 plan, this wasn't designated as farmland pres.
Correct. So the zoning district and the use, the proposed use, they may be different.
Okay.
And again, this is probably one of those situations where it just got blanketed over for some reason when the town hall came into county zoning. Not 100% sure why it would have done that.
Okay.
Chad has something.
I can also add some. I don't
I'll
know.
swear you in quick. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I think some of the confusion with farm pres comes along too is because, so when we're talking about farm pres, there's two aspects of it. There's the farm pres map, which comes to us from the state, basically saying that certain lands are eligible to be farm pres. And then there's the zoning district farm pres. And we oftentimes, we say farm pres, and depending what topic we're talking around, we use the same terms, farm pres, when really one is a zoning district and one is an eligibility through the state to be able to collect the tax benefits if you're in farm pres. So you oftentimes have parcels that are smaller than our zoning district standards that the state in the farm pres plan show it as eligible to be farm pres. And then a lot of the times that map gets translated to our zoning maps, which doesn't meet our zoning standards. So when the town hall came into farm pres, like Garrett was saying, a lot of the times we'll take that state plan, farm pres plan, and then the zoning just gets kind of translated over because they've identified those areas as eligibility farm pres. Sometimes, for example, let's say if a parcel is not on the state plan to be eligible for farm pres, it cannot be put in the zoning district of farm pres. So what they do is they try and make those match as closely as possible. And that's why you get sometimes you'll get these smaller parcels when we're bringing in a township into farm preservation. You'll have some smaller parcels that the zoning district got blanketed over. In this case, like Garrett said, it's essentially what we're here doing today is it would be cleaning up our zoning map to kind of more relate it back to a zoning district that better aligns with what the use actually is.
Sure, okay. Any other questions? That's all I had, so. All right, thank you both. All right, for 5A3, anybody wishing to speak in favor, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak opposed, please identify yourself at this time for 5A2, calling once. Third, anybody wishing to speak as interested, calling once. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify, I am now declaring the public hearing for Tim Vreeland on behalf of Mitch Gums, Fire Island Preservation of Low Density Residential, Town of Hall, now closed. Committee will now enter into deliberation. And let me just be clear what I was hinting at earlier. I don't like the idea of taking land out of farmland pres, but ultimately the zoning code has to reflect how the land is actually being used. So I'm more than favorable in supporting this. The taking land out of farmland pres is going to raise red flags for me. So that's why. I would believe a motion to approve be in order. Supervisor Overbeck?
I'll make a motion to Tim Vreeland on behalf of Mitch Gums for changing the zoning to farmland preservation to low density residential in the town of Lowell, based on finding of facts, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation.
Okay, motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Shapinsky. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. We're down to 4, Jason Flagler on behalf of Bradley Krieger, Rural Estates and General Agriculture, Town of Plover.
All right, this is for Bradley Krieger, petition to rezone land, staff report, October 31st, 2023, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Jason Flieger, located at 163-957 Owl Ridge Road, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. Property owner is Bradley Krieger, located at 221701 County Road D in Burnhamwood, Wisconsin, 54414. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road D at the corner of Carlson Lane and County Road D. The petition of Jason Flieger on behalf of Bradley Krieger to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning ordinance to rezone lands from RE Rural Estate to GA General Agriculture located in all of Lot 1 of CSM number 7498, part of the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter and the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 24, Township 29 North, Range 10 East, Town of Plover. Parent parcel number as shown. The Town of Plover Town Board met on October 10th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, October 31st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On October 10th, 2023, the Town of Plover Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions for Garrett? All right, thanks, Garrett. All right, anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A4, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. 2, anybody wishing to speak opposed to 5A4, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. And then as interested, please identify yourself at this time for item 5A4, calling once. All right, seeing as no one else wishes to testify for this matter, I am now declaring the public hearing for Jason Flagler on behalf of Bradley Krieger, Rural Estate to General Agriculture, Town of Plover now closed. The committee will now deliberate for this matter. Reaching for the Diet Pepsi. I thought you were raising your hand, Tony. All right, Supervisor Treybeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to approve the rezone of Bradley Krieger from rural estate to general agriculture based on finding of fact and from the staff and conclusions of law. Thank you.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? second by Supervisor Straczynski. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. On to 5A5, moving right along. Back to Garrett.
There's just one sec here. Okay, here we go. All right, this is from Michael and Janice Clayman, petition to rezone land. Staff report would be today for October 31st, 2023 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Michael and Janice Clemmen, located at 167-986 Clemmen Lane, Hatley, Wisconsin, 54440. The property owners are Chris and Crystal Clemmen, located at 168-118 Clemmen Lane, Hatley, Wisconsin, 54440. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Clemmen Lane, just west of the intersection of County Road J and Clemmen Lane. The petition of Michael and Janice Clemmen on behalf of Chris and Crystal Clemmen to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning ordinance to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to RR Rural Residential identified as Lot 1 of CSM 10407-43-39, Outlot 1 of CSM 15168-68-90, located in the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter and part of the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 31, Township 27 North, Range 9 East, Town of Reed. Parent parcel number is listed. The Town of Reed Town Board met on October 11th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, October 31st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On October 11th, 2023, the Town of Reed Town Board met or recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by a town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change.
All right, questions for Garrett? All right, thank you, Garrett.
Yep, and we do have Mr. Clement online for questions if you have them.
Yep. So I'm going to call twice for this one just because we have someone. I would just say it's not a requirement to be sworn in, but it's advantageous to the committee if that's the case, because then we can ask questions if there are any, and swearing in just takes a matter of a couple seconds. So I'm just going to put that out there for anybody joining us today. First, I'm going to call those first in favor, and I'm going to do this twice, and I'll do it twice for each one of these. So anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone for 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Calling again, anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. All right, moving on. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Second and final call. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to 5A5, please identify yourself this time. Third, anyone wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify, I am now declaring the public hearing for Michael and Janice Clemmen on behalf of Chris and Crystal Clemmen, General Ag to Rural Residential Town of Reed, now closed. The committee will now enter deliberation. I think motion to approve be in order. Supervisor Straczynski?
Based on finding of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of staff, I'd like to move that we approve the petition of Michael and Janice Clemmen on behalf of Chris and Crystal Clemmen to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 7 zoning to rezone lands from general agriculture to rural residential as identified in the accompanying documents.
All right, motion has been made. Is there a second? second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to 5A6. Marathon County Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department, on behalf of Mickey Family Trust, I'm not going to be able to say this today, Conservancy and Recreation to General Agriculture and General Agriculture to Conservancy, still can't say it, and Recreation, Town of Plover. Shad? Think? Oh, sorry, Garrett,
I'll do
sorry.
it. So this is for Marathon County Parks, Recreation, and Forestry. Petition to rezone land, staff report October 31st, 2023 for the Environmental Resources Committee. Petitioner is Marathon County Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department, located at 500 Forest Street, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. Property owner is Mickey Family Trust, located at 236-841 Eau Claire River Road, Anawa, Wisconsin, 54408. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road Y, just north of the intersection of County Road Y and Campground Way. The petition of Marathon County Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department on behalf of the Mickey Family Trust to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from CVRC Conservancy and Recreation to GA General Agriculture and GA General Agriculture to CVRC Conservancy and Recreation, described as part of the southwest quarter of the fractional northwest quarter and part of the northwest quarter of the fractional southwest quarter, all located in Section 7, Township 29 North, Range 10 East, Town of Plover. The area proposed to be rezoned to GA General Agriculture is described as Outlot 1, and the area to be rezoned to CVRC Conservancy and Recreation is described as Outlot 2 of the preliminary CSM parent parcels as listed. The Town of Plover Town Board met on October 10th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, October 31st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On October 10th, 2023, the Town of Plover Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions for Garrett? Okay.
We also have Director Polly online if you have questions.
Sure. I guess my question would be under 6 for the town's portion. It says, and just because Marathon County is involved in this, and I don't know if I've ever seen that before with a rezone application, it says, has the applicant demonstrated the need for the proposed development at this location? So I guess I'm curious, what is the proposed need for something like this?
So I believe what's happening is that one of the bathrooms that's there is actually across the parcel line.
Oh, this is related to that matter we took up last month.
Yeah, so they're.
Interesting. Okay.
It's, basically, it's a land swap. One is
So
going
this
to
is-
the other, and then they'll be conveyed to each other.
Got it. Okay.
So it'll all become one lot. We're not
Yep.
creating two separate outlots. It'll be conveyed by deed at that, once it's gone through.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. This seems very straightforward. Thank you. All right. Calling once for each of these. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A6, please identify yourself at this time. Calling once. 2, anybody wishing to speak opposed to the proposed rezone 5A6, please identify yourself at this time. Calling once. 3rd, anybody wishing to speak as interested for the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Calling once. Okay. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for the matter of 5A6, Marathon County Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department, on behalf of Mickey Family Trust, Conservancy and Recreation to General Agriculture and General Agriculture to Conservancy and Recreation, Town of Plover, I am now declaring the public hearing closed. The committee will now enter into deliberations. Motion to approve, I'm sure, would be in order here, just to finish the matter that we had last month, so. Supervisor Ritter.
I will make the motion to approve the petition of Marathon County Parks, Rec, and Forestry Department on behalf of Mickey Family Trust to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17, zoning code to rezone lands from Conservancy and Recreation to General Agriculture and General Agriculture to Conservancy and Recreation in the town of Plover, based on town and staff recommendation.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Shafinsky. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed. Motion carries. All right. Done with all 6 of these. Moving on to B, review and possible recommendations to County Board for its consideration. Town zoning changes pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 60.62 sub 3. We've got 1, Ringel Town Zoning Ordinance Section 13. Shad, if you want to just go through and explain each of these, I'm more than willing to entertain any motions as they come up, including a motion to approve all 3. Just going to throw that out there. So, go ahead, Shad.
So real briefly, so the town of Ringel has sent to us some ordinance updates for their zoning code. For example, section 13, which is their citation and enforcement ordinance, they were making updates to that. Ringel, section 11.03, subsection 7, CUP wait period, they're essentially putting in something that states you can only apply for, you have to wait 12 months for every use that you apply for with a CUP before you could apply again for another use. And then Ringel, section 4.08, subsection 3, they added an addition, another exemption for an accessory structure prior to a principal structure. They did submit all the documents we asked for to CPZ, including public notices, copies of the ordinance, and the other documents, as well as the resolution. So they did submit all the documentations that we require. As far as if there are any other questions specifically relating to this, we would have to wait and get a response from Ringel.
Yeah, the biggest thing I saw was the citation additions.
Yep.
I do have a question on 4, though. Why is their signature lines, why are those in red?
Me on the 4.08.
For the very last page in this, yeah. It's page 123 of the packet.
Oh.
Why are town chair and supervisor and all those in red, but then the signatures themselves are black? Is this just a change of practice they would have done, or?
Just maybe
Yeah.
they had track changes on?
Yeah, I think it's probably they just had track changes.
Like, this
on
is
there,
not
didn't get
something that
tracked
I
off.
would deny, or I would recommend denying over. I'm just very curious why that got added there.
Yep. My guess is the formatting just continued on from their original amendment, so it just never got changed.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. That's a summary of the 3 changes there?
Yep.
Okay. Like I said, it's a town zoning change. They're not under our zoning, so I think this is pretty straightforward for us to approve this. So, and I would entertain a motion to approve items 5B 1 through 3 as well, just to streamline this a little. Unless there are questions, of course.
I'll make a motion.
Supervisor Overbeck.
I'll make a motion to approve the Ringel Town Zoning Ordinances, Section 3, Section 11.03, Paragraph 7, and Town Zoning Ordinance, Section 4.08, Paren 3, for approval, based upon the town's approval of the zoning changes.
Yeah. Okay, motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have nothing for C. We are on to D, review and possible action. 1, discussion of HR Finance and Property Committee's 2024 proposed budget and possible recommendations regarding modifications. I put this on the agenda just in case there was further discussion. We had a lot of discussion the past 5 months or so, and we had recommendations that came out of this committee last month. But given that the Finance Committee and then ultimately the County Board are still working on it, I just put this on here as a placeholder in case there was anything. So if anybody has anything to add, now would be the time. Otherwise, those recommendations were made. So does anybody have anything to add? Looking around the room. I'm seeing nothing. John, did you have anything to add? No? Okay. All right, well, that's all I got. I'm sure there'll be more discussion, maybe not so much in the ERC realm, but maybe in other areas with the budget. So like I said, it's just a placeholder in case anybody had anything to add. So seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to D2, discussion of Marathon County Assembly's Ordinance 12.04 draft CPZ.
I'll start us off and then
Lori, could you tell us what page this starts on?
148.
Okay. I know it was at the end of the packet. It's the last 6 pages, I think.
I have
Yes.
146.
146?
I think we have it on 148. I'm not sure why it would be showing up as.
So my packet, which is off of the website, starts on 148. Otherwise, just scroll all the way to the end of the packet, and it's, like I said, it's the last 6 pages. Yeah, just, what's that? Sure, okay. All right. Okay. All right,
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go through the entire draft. We did give an overview of the draft and the purpose of the update at last month's meeting. And then on around about October 9th, Chad did send out an email to all the standing committees that are helping to inform this update and give you the draft as well as we put it in the packet that went out last week. So where we are in terms of the timeline for this draft is right now it's just being circulated to infrastructure, ERC, and public safety. It's also being circulated to all the unincorporated areas of the county for comment. Our goal at this point is to receive comment from the committees and the towns and bring it back to the work group to then revise the draft based on that feedback given. And then we would bring back a final proof before the committees to ask for your consideration to move it forward to county board for adoption. Right now, again, we're in that part of gathering the feedback. We've given the towns until November 15th. So originally we gave them until the 10th. We did hear back that some of them needed a little longer in order to have their meetings in November. And we're trying to get comments from the standing committees by November 15th as well, so then we can bring it back to the work group and revise it in December and hopefully then bring it back before you. But
Okay, I'm going to kick things off here because I've got a number of questions, but of course, we'll have some discussion as we go on here. But I guess the first question I have is that, do we have a list of events let's say in the last 10 years that would qualify for that 3,000 and above threshold?
so we don't have an exact list. We have talked about this in the work group of events we believe would be in there. The two for sure that we believe would qualify are the Taste and Glow and the Edgar Steam Show. There is some thought that there might be some dairy breakfasts that would also meet that number. It depends. I think, were there any others that were brought up? I think those are the only ones that we know of. I mean, part of this is to have a guide in place for as the county continues to grow and attract events too, so that we have something. But those are the only 2 events that, in talking with the sheriff and talking with emergency management, that we know for sure would meet that threshold at this time.
So have we done any outreach to the Steam Show and Taste and Glow regarding
The
this?
Taste and Glow, we already, our departments already work very closely with the Taste and Glow as it relates to developing that event every year. So I think, as Administrator Leonard likes to say, like, we're not too worried that they're already doing pretty much everything that's in here when they work with us. This is more to make sure that we have something in place for the people who maybe aren't aware or coming into our county, and we have a planning document or a guide in place to help as people decide to come to our county.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that reasoning. So like when you read that document, I think there's a requirement that for every 1,000 people, you have 3 security members or something like that. So is like Tasting Glow, is like the Edgar Steam Show, are they already doing that? Or?
I can't say for certain that they are, but I know that they are providing security. I don't know the exact numbers they're providing, but,
Sure.
and I know that part was based on the sheriff's experience with working with these types of events.
Okay, Supervisor Overbeck had something to add to that, and then Marilyn.
Yeah.
So, okay, Supervisor Overbeck.
Well, I've been involved with the Taste and Glow as far as a board member and also running the event. And we've looked into different, I guess, guidebooks. Appleton has a good one where you start to get numbers for number of toilets, number of waste receptacles, security, and all of that. But I think, I'm not sure if I've seen Marathon Counties, because other people are handling that, but that would be something that I think would be very valuable as far as developing a guidebook that's specific to the types of events, such as they're serving food, serving beverages. It all changes in the amount of refuse that you have and how it's handled. Also with traffic patterns, I know we worked very closely with Marathon County as far as in and out, especially with construction or changes. So I think there's real good guidelines that could be set that would guide any new, I guess, events into the right direction as far as what to look for and how to initially plan an event like that. So there's a lot of detail
Yeah.
that goes into and a lot of planning as far as handling people. And I think
I will say, when we worked with the departments to develop the guidelines in the draft, they did reference a lot, like they're referencing their experience, they're referencing their areas of expertise as it relates to the state or other counties. And then we have talked in the work group to something similar to what you're saying, sort of to, not that it would be in the ordinance, but like a best practices guide or some help sheets or something to help an event organizer sort of figure out how they need to set these things up. So we have, that suggestion has come forward and is something that we could definitely develop to help people who are trying to navigate our ordinance. So.
Yeah, I think it would be very, very helpful to organizers as far as having that to start with and then moving from that and doing it better. Because if an event happens, such as an emergency or even to get firefighters or whatever, we've had a couple people that needed EMS help. And it's always good to have that plan in place and outlined, not necessarily as a strict ordinance, but as a guideline.
Right. Okay.
Marilyn.
Would this also include like the Athens Fair, Marathon Fun Days, and other things?
No, those are in incorporated areas. This only affects unincorporated areas.
Okay, thank you.
But it would affect all non-county zoned towns and all unzoned towns as well?
That is correct.
Okay. Yep. Another question I had was, and Supervisor Overbeck makes a very good point. I was very impressed with this document in the sense when you're looking at this, that addresses things like food and if you're going to serve alcohol, I think it's a very comprehensive document in a matter of 6 pages. I would agree with that. A couple of the other things I noticed, one of them was, I thought I read in there that if there are any changes with this ordinance, that they go through the Public Safety Committee.
That may have been a typo.
Okay, because unless I misread a section, but I was extremely confused with that because I think we had some discussion last month about who was going to be doing the permitting and who was going to be doing the enforcement.
Okay. Oh, okay. So Shad's just pointing out, it's actually the fee schedule and
Oh.
not the ordinance. And so I think we figured out, and we would go back and confirm this with Corporation Council, but there will be a separate schedule of fees, just like everything. And so I think we determined it needed to have a home of where it would go through, and it was decided on the Public Safety Committee, but that's something we'll want to confirm with Corporation Council, so.
So where is the fee schedule going to be stored if it's not going to be in the ordinance?
It would be, I mean, similar to how we do our fee schedules are separate from our ordinances with Chapter 17 and 15, so it would be its own document, so.
So why would public safety approve it if we're approving this ordinance? Right?
Well, the county board will be approving.
Oh, yeah. But
So-
is our public safety and health and human services also going to be offering their approval before this goes to the board?
And Corporation Council is telling me that public safety is just a suggestion. So he's like.
But I'm really confused because to me, it would make sense that with a document like this, unless it's going through each one of those three committees for approval, which sounds very convoluted, but for the sake of consistency, you could say that, or you have one committee that's responsible for the fee schedule setting and the actual ordinance language itself, right?
So, public safety and infrastructure and ERC are all the standing committees for this. So like right now, for example, we're bringing it forth to all of those committees for input on the ordinance.
Okay.
And then the fee, schedule of fees, it was just a recommendation that public safety would be the ones that would essentially approve if we were going to change any of the fees at any point given on that schedule.
So why not health and human services? Because there's language in there about, food, right? Sanitation. Like, to me, that's jurisdiction of that committee, so they would want to have.
I think the basis is because this ordinance is based on public safety in general, so that's why that was maybe a suggestion.
And I
Okay.
believe when the work group and the update was determined, the county board made some determination about which committees should be involved. I'm looking at Corporation Council. I'm not, I think that came from county board in terms of which committees.
So the suggestion of public safety as the committee through which the fee schedule would be approved was, I think I put that in there because it was a placeholder for whatever the county board would select as the committee of jurisdiction. But the reason I had suggested public safety was, as Shad indicated, the county's ability to regulate special events is centralized in the county's public safety powers. It's not a zoning thing and it's not a health thing. It's a public safety thing. But certainly that is something that could be changed. It's just it has to live somewhere, so that's where it lives right now in the draft.
Okay. Up, Marilyn.
Who issues the permit?
Right now, it is being proposed that CPZ would oversee the process and issue the permit, but it would be in coordination with the other Marathon County departments. So each area of expertise would review whatever is related to their area of expertise when a permit comes in. So we're not going to review the security. We're going to make sure that they submitted something, but the sheriff would give any comments on the security, for example. So
But you would issue the final permit.
correct. So the fee would be paid to our department, but he's talking about the schedule of fees and where it would be approved when we need to change the schedule of fees. So, yeah.
Out of your department.
Yes, it would be issued out of our department, yes. Mhm.
Do all three of those different ones have to agree to the permit being issued?
The ordinance is proposing that the staff would conduct the process and issue the permit, so it would not go through a committee for approval, no.
So just something to add to that. Right now, in county-zone towns, we do have a special events ordinance just in county-zone towns, and staff strictly at CPZ oversee that, the review and the permit issuance. So it'd be a very similar situation, but like Lori said, once an application is received, it would be dispersed to the departments for their review of their portion of that, whether it's health looking at food or camping, or the sheriff's office looking at security, those things. And then once we receive all those approvals from all those necessary departments, at that time, CPC would be the one issuing that permit on behalf of the county as a whole.
So if you've got 5 of them that have to approve it, what if not all 5 approve it? Do you still approve it?
We would have to, whatever comments are made by whatever department is having an issue, those have to be corrected to meet the ordinance at that point. If there's not enough security, or they're not doing something correct with trash or bathrooms or something like that, those, we would wait for those corrections to the application to be made. And then once that department approves those edits or corrections, and the ordinance or the application as a whole is approved by all the departments, then we would issue it. If one department has a problem with it, then we can't issue the permit.
Supervisor Rollback.
Yeah, I guess what would the timeline be for submitting and getting an approval?
I believe it's 30 days.
So right now, the way the draft is, we're going with 30 days from a completed application.
Okay, and then say if something isn't correct on the application, what process would an organization have to go through to get that approved, such as, say the traffic patterns aren't correct or whatever? What type of process? Is it a resubmittal? Is it working
Usually
with the
it's-
departments?
Yeah, usually it's just like updating something. It's not like they have to resubmit everything again. Usually it's just updating something that was missing, or maybe somebody requested a little bit more detail to understand how they were going to address something in the ordinance, but they wouldn't have to resubmit their entire package or anything like that. So
And then towns that are not zoned or under Marathon County zoning, like Stettin, would that still come to Marathon County?
all
Yes.
unincorporated. Yeah.
All events within Marathon County would
In
come?
unincorporated areas, yeah.
Okay.
So like the village of Weston or the city of Wausau, they aren't.
Okay.
So the towns, whether you're zoned or not zoned.
Yep.
Correct.
So I've got Supervisor Drabeck and then Supervisor Trubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if the Steam Show board from Edgar has been contacted at all and get feedback from them. They've changed a lot of stuff over the years as far as traffic patterns and stuff like that. And
To my knowledge, I don't believe they have, and so we can correct that and definitely reach out to them, so.
that'd be great. Thank you.
And I know we did work with them this past year when they submitted a permit, because they have to submit it every year anyway because they're under county zoning. And what they submit is very, very similar to, it's pretty much right along these lines anyway. So I don't foresee a lot of change for them.
Okay, thank you. I was also wondering about these, on some of these exceptions here, like the exception 2, does that fall under that criteria or no? I don't read lawyer well sometimes, so.
Let me find it here.
It's on 149, I think the bottom.
Okay. So number 2.
That'd be correct, yeah.
Okay, so what that's referring to is in, whether it's a county-zone town or a town-zone town, if there are a parcel that has a business on it that is primarily supplying, their product is event space. Like if you had sometimes town halls are used for just general event space. That's what that's referring to. Those kind of things, they're correctly zoned for it. They're either commercial or they have a conditional use permit to operate that way, either issued by the town itself if it's under their zoning or by the county under county zoning. This would not apply because they've already gone through those steps to ensure that they're able to host events there. It also states in here that they have to follow other state and federal regulations as well. So that would have anything with the health department or anything like that as well.
Thank you.
Supervisor Trubinsky.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is relative to paragraph 19, public nuisance, primarily section A. And I guess I'm just wondering at this point, it's more a question, where did the value limits for the fines, how was that researched and how did that end up being a minimum of $1,000 up to $25,000 for each violation? I guess my question really is the $1,000 as a minimum seems to be perhaps a bit heavy.
I'm looking at Corporation Counsel. Let's see where to start this from. I think in part, I think part of it comes from the idea that we definitely we want people to take this seriously and work with us. This is supposed to be a tool for them to plan a good, safe event within Marathon County. So we certainly want we want to make them aware it exists, and we want them to go through that process. And if somebody, if an individual truly didn't know and just had an event, or maybe it was an event that got bigger than they expected, I don't think we always have the ability to revise those fees and not cite them. There's a lot of ways we can work with them depending on the nature of the situation. But I think if somebody is trying to circumvent the ordinance, then I think we do want to have some power behind it to make sure that they want to work with us as opposed to ignoring the ordinance. But yeah.
I don't have a ton to add to that, but my recollection is we probably based these numbers on some other counties' ordinances as well. But I think the thought behind the minimum of $1,000 forfeiture was, as Lori indicated, if you get to the point where someone has circumvented the special events ordinance and has held an event with this number of people and hasn't provided adequate restrooms or hasn't met one of these central tenets of the ordinance, anything like a $5 fine wouldn't stop them from doing it again. So it's part of that, and then the understanding that for smaller violations, CPZ is going to follow its stepped enforcement process where they're not going to issue a citation unless it's really something that needs to go to that level. So, but certainly that's in the board's purview as well. Those numbers are definitely up for you to set.
With that question about, is it upon the agreed amount, like number of fixtures or whatever that's in the plan, that the violation isn't because the event all of a sudden went from 8,000 to 12,000 and jumped over a requirement?
The fine scale, or this fee or fine schedule is more directed at people who did not pursue the.
Okay,
did
so
not
if you
follow
went
the
through the
ordinance.
planning
So
process,
the people that are
you've
working,
listed and.
the people that are working with us, and if they came for, they got a permit and they thought they were going to have 8,000 people and it ballooned to 12,000 people, well then I think we would then work with them the next year to make sure that obviously their plans addressed that, so.
This is somewhat speaking from experience when we did the Taste and Glow the first year, and all of a sudden there's 40,000 people there. And it's,
Yeah, so
And
if
we
it was
still
like a
were
new
plan-
event and they didn't realize how popular it was going to be.
but there's also a process when we go through the Wausau Grass Drags for the Snowmobile Club, when we have that event out there, there's a process you go through with Stettin and get a permit. So would that go away then, and then just go through Marathon County?
They would still need to.
Yeah, they're still subject to local
So you'd
ordinances
still
as
have to
well.
go, all these events would still have to go through their township, get it approved. But some may think that they're paying a permit fee, and that's the end of it. Is the town required to state to them, I guess because a lot of these are done within weeks of the event in some cases. So I guess I'm wondering how this process gets out there to all these future events and how the process is defined so that they're not in violation and don't end up with $1,000 or, $1 fine or more.
Right.
So it's going to be an education process for some of these hometown events that occur that people aren't aware of all the regulations that go along
Right.
with that.
Yeah, I think we would work closely with our communications person here at the county to get out as much information as we can, understanding, the first year there might be some bumps in terms of people not knowing it exists, but through education, just grow the knowledge that the ordinance exists, so.
Supervisor Schimanski, then Ralph.
Thank you. Yes, I guess what I'm hearing gives me some degree of comfort in that, it's not intended to be heavy-handed, and it's not intended to be used at the drop of a hat. But I do hear a lot of hand waving a little bit, and I have concern that we have something here that would be new, that I can see the possibility for a lot of confusion where something did not previously exist. People are having relatively what they believe to be small events. Maybe they get a little bit bigger than they thought. Now they've crossed the threshold, and either they thought they had the appropriate permits through the town, and now the heavy hand of the county comes in. So that's where I do see perhaps a need to have maybe a little, not saying that having the ability to have a larger fine is not useful, but I wonder if we do need a little bit clearer description on what's actually intended, and perhaps a little bit more discretion on what might be an appropriate level of fine.
I will offer one clarification. This ordinance is on the books right now, so 12.4 does exist. It's just outdated, so that's part of the reason for the update. So,
But not as
as
what
it is
we're
written.
reading now. So I think that's part of the confusion process.
And I would think that recommended that all the towns that they would give someone a permit, they would be notified that they also need to have a permit from the county. It's just working together. If they always needed a town permit, then when they get that permit, say, oh, you also need a permit from the county. And that whoever issues that permit, it should be out to all the towns that if you issue a permit like this, then you need to tell them that they might also need to contact the county to get a permit from them. And that would save any mix-ups and problems.
And I guess, it will be an education process. I think Garrett can tell you that we, probably once a day we get somebody who calls who didn't realize they still need a zoning permit or a building permit, So it's like, we're obviously in the rollout would do a lot of education, but it is going to take time for some people to remember and get in that process of coming to us, so.
And the idea of it, when it comes to something like that with the enforcement and things like that and the fines, we like to begin with education. That's where the way something is written, so it says may be fined, it doesn't say shall. So it allows us to use some degree of discretion depending on what happened, the specific situation, on whether or not a citation is warranted. If an event grows larger than anticipated, they only anticipated 1,500 people, and all of a sudden the word got out and it grew way over 3,000 or it met that threshold, that's where an opportunity for education comes in. If somebody approaches us and we tell them, we give them the guidelines, you need a permit for this event, and they totally ignore us and they completely just say, I'm not going to do it, and they hold the event anyway, that's something where a citation may be issued immediately.
Okay, Supervisor Drabeck had next question.
Thank you. My question has to do, if you have a citation, let's say people were over in the numbers and they didn't have all their ducks in a row, and you give them a citation and they say, no, we did not have that many people. How are you going to back that up?
I think our citation would also, whether or not we issue a citation would depend on what evidence we have, basically. So what evidence do we have before we even issue the citation? Is there something on social media or something, that we can tell that they actually sold tickets? And, so, before we even issue the citation, we would look at what evidence we have, so.
Can I, another question on the exemptions? or exceptions or whatever. On section 3, it says shall not apply to government-sponsored events held on government-owned property. Can you explain that? What government events would we be having on that property?
So.
I'm just not
remember
connecting at all.
everything
I would think that'd be like parkland, right?
Yeah, so it's meant,
Well, I believe it's meant for, like if a town is putting on a big party for their town and they're doing it at the town hall, they own the property, they're organizing it, they're putting it on, it's town money doing it. They still need a permit is basically what it's saying, but we're not charging a fee for that permit because it is a government entity and a government-sponsored event.
and this is similar to how we work with towns in county zoning. We don't charge them a fee for a town who is in county zoning who is getting a permit, so.
Thanks.
That makes a lot more sense because towns like that have their sesquicentennial celebrations. So, yeah, that makes total sense. So, Supervisor Draven, or Supervisor Overback, sorry.
Would they ever consider doing, like, I went through a thing with a building down in Madison, you had to do a design assistance team where you had all the different entities on the phone at a scheduled time that you'd present your event to, and then you'd get all the feedback. They went around round table as far as giving feedback back to that person, and it just took less than a half an hour to give you, all the information you needed in one place. Or say, you need to contact us. No, we don't have any issue with it. We're not involved in this one. It just was a quick way instead of running through every department trying to get information on what they required. But it would be a time period that would be set up ahead of time, just like a committee meeting, but you'd get all of that information. And then you could go back and organize your event.
I think if the event was large enough, complex enough, I think we would definitely consider going that route for efficiency.
Yeah, because it's more efficient for the people there and also for the government agencies.
Is there any room with that 30-day lead up to have an expedited process of something like 2 weeks, just in case you did have a event that missed that 30-day window? Or is that 30 days really needed to collect information?
Well, I think 30 days is put out there as the minimum, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't get it issued more quickly, for sure, so.
My concern comes from if you did have, to some of the earlier discussion, was that if you did have a new event or maybe an existing event that wasn't aware of this, and then it's like 2 weeks before the event and someone says, I think the county updated their ordinance. Don't we need a permit to do this? Or something like, that's.
I guess I would say from practice, again, with the other types of permits that we issue, that we would definitely try and work with that applicant then.
Okay.
To see. That's.
And then as for the enforcement piece, I guess I don't know I don't think there is a way that you can specify this in the ordinance, but we have trained professionals in the sheriff's department and as well as our staff here that are familiar with ordinance enforcement. The concern, of course, comes from somebody goes to an event, they need to use the bathroom, the bathrooms are backed up or whatever, and then they come and complain to the county and say, well, there weren't enough bathrooms at this event, and your ordinance says they need to have sufficient bathrooms so they don't look close enough to see that the number of bathrooms are there sufficient, right? So there's a complaint made, the county investigates, they look at the information that individual has submitted, and they just have to go off of that, right? As far as like them saying that, hey, we have a sufficient number of bathrooms or a sufficient number of on-site services in order to handle this crowd, or is there more evidence gathering done after that complaint would be made?
In the case of the bathrooms, Garrett, is there not something in the ordinance that actually they have to provide
Yeah.
a statement about that they've basically secured the requirement, but
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
but like, let's say that an individual said, I don't think there were enough bathrooms here. Now, there's two avenues with that, right? If there weren't enough, then we would have to amend the ordinance, because for some odd reason we didn't have enough recommended bathrooms. That's the first part. But the other thing would be, how does the county investigate something like that?
It's going to be tough. I mean, it would depend on what evidence
Sure.
could be
Yep.
brought forward at that time, so, yeah.
The question comes is what, it just says, and here it states about it, state and local regulations. For temporary events, that's very difficult to quantify. And you look at some of the recommendations, and you're never going to get an event to pay for that amount of, based upon those. Some of the recommendations I've seen are pretty high. Even security personnel or all of that stuff. There are so much differing opinions on what that should be. I think that if you're going to do that, we've got to really define it, because I don't think otherwise it's not enforceable. And that's really, and you got to determine whether there's food, beverage, beer, what's on site, what's the hours of operation. There's all types of factors that go into that formula to determine the amount of facilities that you have to provide. So that's a tough one as far as recommendations and how to enforce that.
Okay, go ahead, Lori. Or,
I
nope.
did not. Yeah.
Okay, I had one more question just from the thoughts I had coming into the meeting. Can someone in plain language define what an accessory use is? I don't know if it's on the first or second page, it's early in the document. I've read that paragraph, and I don't know if it's because I got up on the wrong side of the bed when I read it, but I don't understand it. It's either on the first or second page of it. No, I'll look. It's, okay, so 149 is what I've got. It's under sub 5 permit and then B. There it is. I don't understand that. Because the way I read it has to do with like other requirements that they may have to meet, not necessarily directly related to the permit, but I could very well be wrong with that.
Might have to relook at that one.
I think
You
I
wanna-
might.
Go on.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Explain this to me in Jake terms, not lawyer speak.
Oh man, you're asking the wrong person. No, I had to read it twice just now to try to digest it. I think what this is saying is, if you're issued a permit under this special events ordinance, that means you can have your assembly along with whatever else you plan to do during that assembly. And you also have to get whatever other licenses or permits are required by state and federal or local law. That's how I read it.
In order to do those other things?
So it's saying this permit covers you being able to hold a special event with this amount of people in Marathon County in an unincorporated area, but it doesn't cover, for instance, if a town permit is needed for something specific that you wanted to do in your event.
Like a provisional liquor license?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. That makes sense. That's what I thought. I just wanted to, okay, very good.
I don't know that it's written where that is the plain meaning of it on your first read, though.
That's fair. I think I got in the ballpark with my
Yeah.
readings, so, Marilyn.
Jake, usually like that, the local municipality would issue what they call a picnic license, which is very limited. My question deals with the health department. When does the health department get in when there is food being made?
So when an application is presented to us, the entire application gets sent out to all the departments for their review. If food is part of that, obviously the health department is going to look at it for toilets and potable water and things like that. But if food is involved, that's part of their review. So CPZ wouldn't have anything to do with their that portion of it. Whatever the application is brought in, the entire thing gets sent to every department, not just bits and pieces of it.
So the health department could go out there and inspect to see if the food is being prepared properly.
That is correct. So typically, at least with zoning, when a permit is issued, we have the right to enter that property at any reasonable time to do an inspection. It's part of you agreeing to abide by the guidelines that are listed in the ordinance and the permit that's issued to you. So at that point, the health department would have just cause at any point to enter that site during the event to inspect things.
Another question regarding if there's two organizations running the event, and I'll use Taste and Glow as an example. Taste and Glow has the balloons and some certain types of events going on that is underneath that board of directors. And there's Trailmates Snowmobile Club, which has the food and other vendors and whatever on site. Trailmates goes and gets the permit. Does that cover everything on that site at that date?
So what?
Because there's
Yeah.
almost like, and that happens with a lot of events.
Right. So a lot of times with this, it's a lot easier if you have kind of one overarching person or entity that's going to be applying for the permit. When you apply for the permit, we recommend that you apply for everything that you're planning to do, not just part of it, because then you run into issues where now you go back to enforcement. Is the 3,000 people there for food, or are 3,000 people there for the balloons, or is it split 50-50? You don't know. So it's best to have one, and we would recommend that to, whether one board, came to us and the other, recommend that you have one point person or one maybe combined entity between the two in order to streamline and make that a lot simpler for if there's edits that need to be made, if there's questions, and then issuing that permit.
Thank you. Building on Taste and Glow, just because it makes such a great example, as we're discussing this, it occurs to me, so what happens, the board of directors for Taste and Glow does everything, gets the overarching permit, but there are, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 different food vendors out there. So how does each of those come back in terms of licensing, permitting, and whatnot with the health department? Because in this case, the Taste and Glow group itself may in fact have a hamburger stand where they are going to serve food, but there might be 12 other organizations there that are there. Some of them may be volunteer organizations that are local. Some of them may be commercial ventures, food trucks, whatnot, that are out there that are, other than the fact that they've asked for the ability to be on site, have no other coordination or contact with the Taste and Glow board. So how does that all work for those permits?
My guess, and don't quote me on it, but my guess is when an event like that is scheduled, something of that magnitude, there's going to be a list of vendors, people that are signed up to be part of this, food vendors, the balloon, whatever organizations are sponsoring the balloons, the beer tent, all those things. All of those things should be listed on that permit on a good, on the hopeful, everything we could hope for, be listed on that permit, and then it would be on the health department to enforce their section of the ordinance and do their investigation however they believe it needs to be done.
So following up on that, just because I want to understand clearly what we're doing and what we're not doing. Organization A is out there, they're listed on the events. The Taste and Glow group has listed 15 different applications for food vendors. Number 13 on that list is not in compliance. So is there anything in this ordinance that somehow then comes back to the Taste and Glow group, where this is actually a separate independent organization or group that's just come out there to do fundraising or as a commercial venture, but it's a separate organization, separate health inspection, separate health, license and so on?
I don't think so. It would be on the individual vendors to go through the health department and get their own permitting. Nothing in this ordinance says that the event organizer takes on the liability of those independent providers. All the event provider has to do is have a plan in place for making sure the people who are attending have potable water and toilets and et cetera. But the individual vendors are responsible for meeting the food codes and everything else. So that would not translate into additional liability for the event holder as I read the ordinance.
I said my last one was my last one. I've actually got two more. So this one, Supervisor Overbeck actually jogged my memory with this. So we were talking about the information to be submitted. This is on 150 or sub 11, which is application, and then B reads, the name, residence, and mailing address of all persons required to sign the application, makes sense, and in the case of a corporation, a certified copy of the articles of incorporation together with the name, residence, and mailing address of each person holding 10% or more of the stock of said corporation. Is that standard when we're asking a corporation to submit something, to have something like that as part of the information that we would want?
It's in at least one other county's ordinance.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's something that we as a county typically ask for. I think the idea is if we're issuing this permit to an organization, we want to make sure that everyone who has potential liability for violations is signing. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's standard. I would say it's copied from another county.
So I don't know business law at all, but if you're a corporation, are you a public entity? So would there be disclosure of those 10% ownership individuals out there already?
Depends on the type of corporation.
Okay, because this ultimately becomes a public record, right?
The permit
application
application,
will.
probably yes.
Okay. See, I don't necessarily, like, I hear what's being said as far as the, if you're a member of that corporation, that makes sense, but I don't know. Also, point of contact, it seems weird to me that there wouldn't be one individual designated as the point of contact.
And it could be something as simple as writing it to say the permit application has to be signed by, in the case of a corporation, someone who's able to sign on behalf of the corporation.
I would authorize by their,
Right.
Yeah, I would rather see something like that than this. Okay.
That's a very good point.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I have those. Okay, the other thing I had was, we had a request to send this to the Edgar Steam Show. If we could also, because there were two that we identified earlier, was the Steam Show and then Taste and Glow. I know Supervisor Olbeck is aware of this because of his duties on the committee, but if we could also please send it to the Taste and Glow as well, that would be great. So, okay. Other things, Supervisor Olbeck.
There's another question on there. Let's see, where it was about the number of people. It was in that same. Where is that? Oh, at item H or paragraph H, a statement as to the maximum number of persons which the applicant shall permit to assemble at any time. This shall not exceed. I mean, that shall, the wording of that is very specific, and I'm just wondering how they figure on the number of people that attend these events, because there's no counting of them, and if you go by the estimate of the CVB or whatever, it's blowing up way beyond what the number really is because they do it by cell phone pings and everything else. So, you know, they estimated at the Balloon Fest there was 100,000 people. There is not even close to that. But if that was taken and reported, that's going to cause some issues as far as how you know, the word shall is very restrictive because it has to be put in the application, and there's no way to regulate that on a large scale event.
So the way that I'm reading it is this would apply for the maximum number of people that you think that you can accommodate. Because if you think about it on a 40-acre parcel, how many people can you really squeeze into a 40-acre parcel, standing side by side, one on top of the other, versus how many can comfortably be there, how many can you accommodate, how many can you provide medical services if you need to, how many can you honestly feed, provide toilets, potable water, provide parking, those kind of things. So the idea is to get a maximum number that they are going to allow on site at any one time. Now, if they figure the event is going to have 5,000 people, but they think that they can accommodate 8,000 people, that's their number that they're saying is a max capacity, much less max capacity like a room or a pool or something like that. I believe that's what we're going after with that maximum number. You know, and some of these events are ticketed events where you say, I'm selling 3,500 tickets maximum because this is what I can get on here. And if you get to 3,500, you're saying that, yep, 3,500 tickets and that's it. We're not selling 4,000. We're not selling 4,500. It's 3,500 and that's it. So I believe that's what that section is going after.
It actually says shall not. I mean, it's very specific.
Right.
So who's going to make that judgment? You know, all of a sudden the site's full or parking's full or whatever, and you just have more and more people showing up. And is the event required to shut down admittance?
The way this is written, is what that's indicated, I believe, because you're stating that this is your capability to run this event safely, and that anything above that max capacity that the applicant has basically set. We're not setting that as a county. The applicant is setting that, stating based on their event and what they're doing, they can safely accommodate this many people, and then that's how you go through and apply the ordinance.
But I think it's even more difficult even on smaller events to say, you know, you got 3,000 or 5,000. You know, on an 80-acre property, you can do quite a bit. But on a small property, you cannot. So, I mean, that's going to be a real difficult thing to put in the application and control, you know, with multiple gates or whatever, and how you're going to actually say our site's full.
Right.
So I think that's going to be a difficulty.
And some of that accountability goes to the event holder itself. Obviously, we don't have the staff to go out and police every single event, but the idea and the benefit of it is and as the ordinance as a whole, is to run a safe event for the people that are there, protect the people that aren't part of the event but are surrounding the event, and then in order to, by having a safe event, to promote having more of these events, maybe it'll bring other event organizers in, and they'll say, Marathon County's got it together. They have a very strict policy on how these are set up, and people are safe when they host these events, which makes it a safer financial bet for somebody organizing an event of this size.
So everyone has to buy turnstiles.
Well, I read that maybe in a way that coincides with the discussion here, because I'm thinking in terms of buses today, and I don't know why, but that's how I'm viewing this. So if you rode the bus, you know, at elementary school as a kid, you know that when you get on, there's that red number right above the bus driver's head, right? Maximum capacity was a 71 or whatever. That's probably set by some federal agency, state agency, whatever. So I think to Supervisor Overbeck's point, you know, the key is how do you arrive at that 71 number, right? Like, if that's the duty of the organizer, then they need to have some sort of experience with estimating how many people can be there. Because to Garrett's point, if the bus says 71 people can be on, and the bus driver says, I think we're going to have 30 people on, but then they end up having 50, that to me is, you're overshooting your estimate, but you're still below that 71. So that to me still coincides with the shall. It's when you have a number like 71, but you end up having 150 people on the bus, that is probably very questionable, right? At least that's how I view it.
And there might be a way to do this, and in the way you look at the site as far as square footage, buildings look at it at like 15 square feet if you have tables, 7 square feet if you're standing. So there may be a way of determining that to give some guidance. An 80-acre site with parking and whatever you've got this area for exhibits or whatever, you can start to figure that out. But it's going to take some guidance from someone to give that to them. Like, I know we can put 2,000 cars in our parking lot.
Right.
That, multiply that by 4, you got 8,000 people. And you start adding parking lots or buses, you can start to figure out what can be there at a certain time. But it may need some guidance on that for setting those limits. Otherwise, I could say, well, we could just pack them in like an elevator.
Sure.
And, be standing room only. So, and if I put 40,000, that's what you're going to allow, because I probably put that on the application and you have no guidance to go on that. So that may be something to work through.
So, Shafinsky.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to build on that because I look at paragraph H, the statement as to the maximum number of persons the applicant shall permit to assemble at any time. Okay, they're making a decision based on whatever knowledge they may bring to the evaluation. And that can change drastically depending on who they are and what kind of capabilities they bring to the table and experience. I'm sure that using Taste and Glow, the Taste and Glow people have a very different understanding and level of experience today than they did before the first event was held. There was a very steep learning curve, I suspect. But then we go to subparagraph I, the maximum number which can reasonably assemble at the location of the assembly in consideration, And this is where I look at this in a couple of different lights. One of which is, it sounds so reasonable, the maximum number which can be reasonably assembled, but that is so incredibly vague that how in the world do you enforce that, and how do we propose that we're going to go to an event organizer and say, we disagree with your number. You pulled a number out, you put a number on your application of X. We as in Marathon County say, we think it's X divided by 2. There's nothing there that is quantifiable and definable, even though the word sounds so reasonable. The second part of what I'm concerned about here is the burden upon which that we're going to put on event organizers. And I differ to some extent and I have some concern about just how much burden we put on and how strict we're going to be. In my mind and in many of the county board members, less government is better government. So putting a higher burden is not necessarily in line with where we want to go. That goes in the opposite direction for some other people. But I look at this and I'm thinking about what Supervisor Overbeck just kind of described, and he has a lot of very specialized knowledge and education in his profession, and he immediately started describing how one could quantify the number of people that could be accommodated in a particular location. He started out thinking in terms of 80 acres or 40 acres, and then he said, well, we need parking and how much space we're going to set aside for the parking lot and how much space we're going to set aside for toilets and so on and so forth. He's very deeply educated in that, so that comes very natural to him. But yet, do we want to put that type of burden on a event that maybe is going to be held once in somebody's lifetime? Maybe it's a 100-year anniversary event for a town or some small organization where they don't have that level of knowledge and capability, nor do I think is it reasonable that they have to go out and hire an architect or somebody of similar knowledge to be able to plan this for them.
I just want to make a couple of comments. We're getting a little long with the discussion, so I want to wrap it up at some point too, because I think there's more work that still has to be done at the task force level.
Yeah, we'll
So,
absolutely take the comments back to
Yeah.
work it through with the work group, so.
So I think an item of note would be that item H for the work group to take a look at. I mean, I agree. I don't think that more government is necessarily the solution. I would just add, if we were all angels, then we wouldn't need police. So I 100% hear what the comments that have been made. I think there's a way that this can be reasonable, right? But I agree with Supervisor Shafinsky and Supervisor Overbeck that H does give me a little bit of concern as well. So maybe there's a better way to arrive at a number, or maybe to revisit what I think Supervisor Overbeck said earlier about the guidelines to arrive at that number, so that there's some surety on behalf of the applicants when they provide that number, that they're not just making up something totally arbitrary. Last comment I'll make is that I am glad, I'm glad that there is that May under 19 for public nuisance. I think that gives the county the ability to work within that stepped enforcement capability, that culture that we have, so that we aren't being heavy-handed. So I give staff a lot of credit and the work group a lot of credit for including that in the language. So, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I think this goes back to the task force and it'll probably arrive back in front of this group in December.
Yeah, if we're
Okay.
able to work it through, yes, it'll come back when it's ready, and we're trying for December, for sure.
Okay.
So. Mike's giving a thumbs up, but with a smile.
Okay. And then the recommendations that this be provided to the STEAM show and then the Taste and Glow, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else for today's discussion?
Who is involved in the task force?
So it includes,
That guy. Yeah, Rick.
Rick's, I was like, what are you pointing at? The ghost, okay.
Well, I think he must be combining with snow tires today.
Yeah, so representatives from ERC, Public Safety and Infrastructure came forward to serve on the work group, and then we have staff from Corporation Council, CPZ, Health Department, Emergency Management, Sheriff, Highway, Parks. They've all given input to the process, so.
Okay.
Has there been any input from some larger events?
Just, I think the staff who have worked with the events have brought forth input, so, at this point. And then we are starting to get some feedback from towns, but nothing official yet, so.
You know, we'd really like to hear from them if possible. I don't know if maybe they're uncomfortable sharing their thoughts, but it really would be nice to get their, I don't know if there's a way, I mean, just as simple as, hey, we ask that you provide feedback, or the committee is interested in hearing your feedback, something like that. I think that would be really beneficial.
We did also present at East and West Towns Association meetings, and then we did stress that we do want the comments to come from the towns.
Okay.
On something like this, so we'll continue to make that push.
Yeah, that's great.
Have you
Fantastic.
looked at, another question, have you looked at other guidelines as far as, like, I know the city of Appleton has things as far as all those numbers, as far as number of toilets and all of that stuff. That's really what's gonna guide the numbers that you can have on site.
Oh.
Can you
sorry,
use
we're
your
getting
mic?
A cue that they can't hear you because you're not using the mic. Sorry.
I was just mentioning about the city of Appleton, and there's some different organizations. I think La Crosse has some things, but they have some guidelines as far as trying to identify the number that you can handle. And part of it is how much the event wants to spend on all the other facilities, such toilets and generators and lights and everything else.
Right.
And that's going to guide how many people you actually can put on site. And so that might be a good place to start, is if you're willing to invest in 400 toilets, you can have this many people, and will it fit on your site? But that may be a way of working through that item H.
I just had a comment on that H, and to build off what Supervisor Overbeck was just saying. The way I read H is that it's a part of the application that the applicant is saying, I'm applying for a permit. This is how many people we are going to look to accommodate under this permit. And that number then serves to inform, like you said, okay, what are the toilet requirements? What are the potable water requirements? The reason right now it's written in a, I guess, broader sense is that the number of toilets or the number, the amount of potable water or the other requirements are definitely intertwined with how many people are going to be present. So unless you create a grid structure that says, okay, if event has X amount of people, then toilets and water and other requirements are here, which I guess you could do, then you have to write it in a way that says, okay, applicant, tell us what you envision this event as accommodating, and then in the permit we'll outline, okay, what do you need to meet the requirements that the county's putting forward. But there are multiple ways to do it, so I think the feedback that we got today definitely was valuable.
So I'm going to, and I think a lot of good work has been done on this. And we've had a good discussion. It's not, it sounds like we're being negative, but I think we're raising a lot of good questions. And I'm going to raise one more just as a thought. Do some of our concerns maybe get mitigated depending on what the level is where this takes into effect? Right now, this is written for events that start with 3,000 people or more. I'm going to just throw out the thought that is 3,000 the right ceiling or threshold number? Would the number be, would we be better served by maybe making the threshold 5,000? I don't know the answer to that, but I just think it may be something that might be worth thinking about so that we strike the appropriate balance.
I'll just say I think that's one of the main things that the task force focused on was what is that number? And I think that's one of the big policy decisions in this ordinance, if the board chooses to adopt it, is, okay, if you're going to regulate, at what level? What's that threshold? What's that trigger? So I think that has to be part of the conversation, and it has to be an important part of the conversation. So I completely agree with that comment.
And another thing might be, how many days is this event going to be held?
Which I think is addressed. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's over 8 hours, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's early. It's either on page 1 or 2.
Pretty sure it's within 8 hours, so.
Actually, not to nitpick, that section is also, again, Mike, this is no reflection on your writing for ordinances, but that one I was confused by. So where is it? Maybe I'm just easily confused. Let's see here. Because I didn't, where is it? If Lori, if you find it before me.
Trying to find it.
Okay.
So is it held like on a Friday and a Saturday,
it's
or
on-
Friday, Saturday,
yeah.
Sunday?
So it's So, yeah, I mean, we, like Mike said, we talked a lot within the group about what our definition was here. And so it's on 5 under permit, anticipated assembly of 3,000 or more attendees at any one time or in aggregate over the course of 8 consecutive hours. So the interpretation there being like, if you know you're going to hit 3,000 people in an hour, you still have to get it. If you know you're going to hit 3,000 people in 8 hours, you still have to get it. As long as you believe you're going to achieve 3,000 people in attendance, you need to pursue that permit. And we even discussed that if somebody anticipates possibly that they might hit it within 9 hours, we might still encourage them to come because they could, they're in that buffer there. So we would probably encourage them to work with our department on something. But
So if I'm an event organizer and I have 500 people per hour over the course of 8 hours, I definitely need this permit. Or if I'm an event organizer and I only have 3,000 people for an hour, I need this permit, right?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe I just need to read things out loud or have them read to
Did I
me.
miss something,
And,
Mike? Did I miss something? Oh, okay.
That was definitely written by
We
a
talked
lawyer.
lot.
Perhaps not this lawyer, but a lawyer. So I can understand your confusion because it takes a couple of reads, I feel like.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Supervisor Finsky.
Every time we go off on something, it sparks another question.
Yeah.
Under 4C event definitions, under 4C event, a temporary planned event. So we're somewhat circular in our writing and logic there. Organized, sponsored, and conducted by any person or entity. These temporary events may be one day, span multiple consecutive days, or occur in series. I have no idea what you mean by occur in series.
So a good example of that is the events on the square, or the 400 block. That happens every Wednesday all summer long. So that's what we would be referring to as a series of events. We know it's going to happen every week and over a prolonged period of time.
Thank you.
They would not be, that specific event is in an incorporated area that's covered under
Right, no,
Wausau.
they wouldn't
But
have
if
that
something
one.
like that were to move to an unincorporated area of Marathon County and go on, say, for just a summer series, then
Mm-hmm.
yes.
So that would only require one permit.
We would I think we could, we could
Right.
do it through one permit for sure. They would apply for the series of events is what they would do. So the application might be bigger, it might look a little different, but they would apply for the series, yeah.
Right.
Well, there go my plans for a weekly rock concert series on the cornfield.
You can still have one.
Yes, I could. Yeah. All right. Okay, anything else? Just for today, of course. There'll be more discussion next month, of course. Okay. All right, very good. Thank you for the good discussion. Thank you, staff. Thank you, committee. All right. We are on to 6A1, discussion on updates to general code ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 15, private sewage systems, Chapter 21, non-metallic mining, reclamation, Chapter 22, shoreline, wetland, and floodplain code. There's nothing in the packet, so Shad, you just have an update, I'm guessing?
Yeah, honestly, this is just kind of as a reminder that we're looking at these chapters. I know last month we didn't bring up Chapter 22. If you guys recall, last year we were intending to update our shoreline ordinance. We were waiting on the DNR's model ordinance to come out. Unfortunately, the shoreline model ordinance, we're still waiting on that. But one of the things we found out is currently our shoreline and wetland code are in one Chapter 22. So there's recently been an update to the floodplain code. A challenge with the shoreline and floodplain code being in the same chapter is if we want to edit our floodplain section to the model ordinance of the floodplain, the DNR's floodplain model ordinance, we have to not only get approvals for the floodplain team, but also the shoreline team with DNR. And normally that's not normally an issue, but it does bring a bit of a time crunch onto it. Each department gets 30 days or to review. So we could be looking at a 60-day timeline for DNR to approve our changes to it. So to simplify that a little bit, we're looking at splitting out floodplain from shoreline. So floodplain would become a new chapter in the Marathon County General Code of Ordinances. I believe that chapter, and this could change if we find out this isn't the right number, but it would be chapter 7 or 27 would be the new floodplain code. And essentially that's just for ease for us updating it so we don't have to go to both parties when we're just changing one ordinance. For instance, if a shoreland statute changes, we don't have to get approval from the floodplain side of things. We can just update that code. So that's what we're looking at doing. We're looking at splitting out chapter, so it'd be a chapter 22 would remain shoreland, and then floodplain would be chapter 27. And again, that 27 might change depending on if we're told we can or can't use 27 as our number. And then just 15 and 21, again, those are just clarifications and statute changes. And next month, we're hoping to have that table of changes for you guys so you guys we can start having those discussions if you guys feel something should be changed or not. I urge if you do have comments that you know already about any of these chapters that you'd like to see in the changes, let us know. We can try and incorporate some of that stuff. But yeah, it's just more or less an update, and I wanted to bring up chapter 22 because I know last month we didn't have that on there, but that's what we're intending to do with chapter 22.
Okay, questions for Shad? All right, yeah.
Sorry, just one more thing. And hopefully if the shoreland, we should be expecting it, we're told any day now, if the shoreland one comes out in time, we will be amending that as well to the new model ordinance that they bring out. However, we might run into a situation where we have to adopt our current shoreline section that's already in 22, again, just to remove the floodplain side of things. And then shortly after that, bring it back to you guys to do the updates to the model ordinance. But just so you guys are aware that you may be seeing chapter 22 a couple times just because of the timeline in the model ordinance coming out.
Okay.
Chair?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question, why the urgency then? Would it maybe make more sense if we know that it's dependent upon the DNR's timeline outside of your control, of course. Would it make more sense just to postpone consideration of the floodland, shoreland zoning and floodplain ordinances until the model ordinances are actually written and you have them and have had a chance to analyze and digest them? And then do this all at once? Is there any reason for some urgency otherwise?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I will say that was our intention. We've been waiting over a year for the shoreland one. So part of it is the floodplain model ordinance was in the beginning of 2022 already, and we've been waiting for this other model ordinance to come out. And at some point where we want to make sure our ordinance is fully up to date with the new language that they have in there. The new floodplain ordinance that they came out with has some language in it that helps us regulate road projects. It makes it a little bit more clear on, like, if somebody's resurfacing a road or putting in a culvert, those types of things still need floodplain approval. And the new ordinance actually addresses a little bit, it simplifies it, how we go through that process. So getting that in our ordinance will help not only our permitting process, but also the townships when they do a lot of these road projects. But yes, I agree. In a perfect world, it'd be great to wait for both to come about. And I would love to do that. It's just we've kind of been waiting over a year already, being told it'd happen next month, and it hasn't happened yet. So that's one of the important parts about splitting these out. If they're split out, we can update the floodplain and not update chapter 22, and it just makes things a lot easier.
Anything else for Shad here? All right. Thank you. On to 7, policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determination. We have none. On to 8, next meeting, December 5th, 2023, 3 p.m., Assembly Room, and future agenda items. A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussions. 8B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I don't have anything. Staff, do you have anything? Nope.
I do not.
All right. Okay, on to 9. Motion by Drabeck, second by Straczynski. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, staff. Thank you, members of ERC. Happy Halloween.
All right, we just got a few things to sign before everybody heads out. By a few, I mean several.
Are you more or less than 27?
It's close.
Can I borrow that pen from you, please?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Oh.